What's up, guys? This is the last video I'm recording today. This is the fourth one. I recorded the giant minor, this one, and the balloon audio all today, which is, it's getting pretty tiring, but I'm trying to get this, like I've said in a video prior to this, I'm trying to get this series done because it's really dragging on, and I want to get to the next one because I think it'll be more beneficial and helpful, even though, I mean, I don't know how many people are actually going to watch it. I don't know if anyone really will. But if you do, I think a lot of the stuff that I'm going to say is going to be pretty helpful and you'll be able to apply it to your gameplay, and if you practice this stuff and do it correctly, you'll you're probably not going to get to the global leaderboards because you've got to have a max account for that, but you'll definitely become a better player regardless. So this first replay is over a rocket deck. Rocket, you used to be able to just kind of spell cycle and just shoot rockets over, but if you do that, you're going to get pounded because you have 6 less elixir to defend with, and your opponent's generally going to rush you because they have 10 elixir to your 4, so you've got to defend, and it's going to be really hard. So a lot of times people will have Rocket in their deck kind of as a surprise card to save for the end when their opponent's tower is down. So generally they'll use a miner or an X-bow or mortar or uh, did I say royal giant? Just chip decks pretty much, and then at the end they have their opponent's tower down enough to where they can just rocket it. And personally, I hate the rocket because it doesn't take much skill to shoot a rocket and get 400 to 500, if not more, damage on a tower. Um, I like it when players can actually get through defense and actually get real tower damage. It kind of gets under my skin when people use a spell to take out a very significant amount of a tower's health. But if you want to use it, don't just use it by itself. Like I've said, you're gonna get the defense prior, the counter push that your opponent will come with is going to be probably almost impossible to stop. So use it in conjunction with other stuff and try to get value with it. If your opponent sets down a Sparky or a Bowler or something behind their crown tower, shoot the rocket over there and hit the tower and the Bowler, or the tower and the Sparky, the tower and the Wizard, whatever it would be. But you want to make sure it's a good amount of elixir, worth. If it's 1 elixir skeletons, it's worthless. There's no point to do it. But if it's 4 elixir or more, that's definitely a good trade. Well, I say that if you rocket a golem, it's not really gonna be as valuable and as helpful to you. You need to rocket these high DPS units that are a big threat coming down the lane. Like if they for some reason set down a mini P.E.K.K.A behind the tower, rocket that, or lumberjack, something like that, that's gonna do a lot of DPS but won't because you rocket it and the tower. So this next deck is pretty interesting. It's given by Nova from the clan Christ is Alive. It's a pretty cool deck. He runs Pump and has a level 6 P.E.K.K.A, I think, and level 6 epics are very hard to get. P.E.K.K.A's also, for me, it's always been hard to get to work. But he's up at very high trophies with this deck. Uh, we'll see coming up. This deck, if you can't tell already, is meant to do one thing and one thing only, to completely overpower someone. It's got a P.E.K.K.A, a Lumberjack, a Mini P.E.K.K.A, a Wizard, Princess, Pump. He's obviously trying to just absolutely run over someone. And the Wizard's there, obviously, for splash support for the P.E.K.K.A, because the P.E.K.K.A's a single targeting unit. And here, I think his opponent's probably, I don't know if he didn't give up yet, but I think he should have, because it's going to be hard to come back from that deficit. If you're going to use the P.E.K.K.A., I would probably use it in conjunction with another win condition. I've seen Hog Rider in P.E.K.K.A. That's a very good combo. I've also seen Minor Control with P.E.K.K.A. If you want to just use the P.E.K.K.A. as your win condition, which means that's what you're depending on to get to your opponent's tower and actually do damage, you've got to surround it with some splash. Witch works really well with it. Wizard, I'm assuming that Executioner would. And so make sure to surround it with that. It'd also be nice to give it a speed boost if you have enough room in your deck or can do that with a Lumberjack or a Rage. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious. The P.E.K.K.A. does a lot of DPS, has a lot of life, so it's a very good counter to Royal Giant, Three Musketeers, Giant, Golem. Since it got its buff to where it deploys a lot quicker, it's good against Hog Rider. It's a pretty much all-around solid defense, except for against splash units. The only thing is it costs a lot of elixir, so using the P.E.K.K.A. is not a bad option. It's come back into the meta and it's come back into the game a lot more since it got its buff, and it's been getting buffs for a little while now because it hasn't been in the game for a while. So next we've got, I think this was a spawner, and a true spawner in my opinion is when you have two or more spawners. There are a lot of people who have one spawner, and that doesn't frustrate me near as much as people who just use like two or more spawner buildings is a little overboard. And I mean, Barbarian Hut and Goblin Gang, your opponent puts down the Barbarian Hut, and then the barbarians are spawning obviously, and then the goblins come after and are being tanked for by the barbarians, and then so the tower's focusing on these barbarians while these little spear goblins are building up and just hitting your tower and slowly but surely taking it down. That just frustrates me. Tombstone's not going to be as much of a threat because the tower one-shots them. If your opponent uses, like, what is it, the Furnace, in conjunction with other spawners, that can be pretty annoying because the constant damage you get on your tower from that. One Fire Spirit is about the same amount of damage as a Fireball, depending on the level of the Fire Spirit and the level of the Fireball, but it's roughly the same. So, I mean, having those hit your tower just consistently and constantly it's just annoying. But using one spawner, the Barbarian Hut, like I said in the balloon video, this clan cries for life. Quite a few of their top guys and even some of the others are using this Barbarian Hut because it has more life than any building in the game. It spawns the barbarians, which are very good defense, and it lasts for a long time. So, and it's not very spell prone. Somebody fireballs it, I mean, you're still going to get 2 or 3 waves of barbarians. Lightning, you're still going to get probably 2 more waves of barbarians. And a rocket, you'll probably get 1 more, if maybe 2. So, hitting the Barbarian Hut with a spell isn't going to be too valuable for your opponent because it has so much life. So, I would, if you're needing a good defensive building, consider using this. It's also pretty good with graveyard decks because it spawns consistent tanks. So if you want to combo graveyard, you can just combo it with one of the waves of barbarians, which is they're 2 pretty good little tanks for the graveyard. So next we've got Three Musketeers, I believe. Yes, this is me. My Three Musketeers are under-leveled for ladder. I use them fairly often in challenges because they're level 7. I've got pretty much all my stuff tournament standard besides epics. And I choose to use this pretty cool little Three Musketeers cycle deck. It's got Three Musketeers for lightning, fireball, poison bait, and then minion horde for fireball, poison bait, and then the pump for poison, lightning, fireball bait. So the opponent's got to choose how they want to use their spells, and it can be pretty tough for opponents. This is one of the top Three Musketeer decks, I think, from the leaderboards. It's very consistent. What you want to do with this deck is cycle pumps and play solid defense. Sadly, I think pump was my last card in this game, so I just finally actually get a pump down right here. And when you put down a pump, you got to be ready for your opponent to push pretty hard, unless they, of course, have a pump. They're going to push hard because they know you're at an elixir disadvantage, so you got to be careful of that. And since the heal got introduced to the game, Three Musketeers has become a lot more viable, because when you can even bunch your Three Musketeers. If your opponent fireballs them, you can heal them up, and they'll be full life by the time they get to offense. And if you poison them, same thing, they'll be full life when they get to offense. So I recently played in a tournament where I lost to a guy who used Three Musketeer heal. It was one of the most frustrating decks ever. I mean, I couldn't do almost anything to stop him. I actually used the Three Musketeer heal in a grand challenge and went 9-3. So it's a good deck. On ladder, it's going to be kind of harder to upgrade, because it's not as hard as a lot of others, though, because Three Musketeers is a rare and so is heal. And a lot of the cards in this deck are easy to upgrade besides the 2 legendaries, obviously. So when you're using Three Musketeers, you got to protect them. Almost always split them unless you have a heal spell, because you cannot allow your opponent to get a ton of value on them, because if they fireball Three Musketeers and zap them and it kills them, or just poison. We'll take poison for example first. Poison's 4 elixir, Three Musketeers is 9. If 4 elixir kills 9, I mean, that's simple math. You lose 5 elixir, but 5 elixir is a lot of elixir in this game. If they use fireball zap, that's 6 elixir. You get a 3 elixir negative trade, which is also, that can end up hurting you pretty bad. So try, if you don't have heal spell in the deck, try splitting them in the back or in the front, depending on what your opponent's doing. Unless you know your opponent's down on elixir. You see here I put 3 in the same lane. I also figured out that he didn't really have a big spell to kill them, so I was able to do that. So thankfully this is the last video of this series. I hope you kind of liked it. I'll be doing something new pretty soon, and I'll see you later.